Remember the days when we said it would never happen? Well, big greedy boys are still proving us wrong, as Marvel may be getting the X-Men into their movies. Unless of course you're watching this in the future, and it all turned out just to be false rumors. Then what can I say? What a waste of an intro. It's been a rocky road for the X-Men mutants in the live-action world. They started off pretty strong, but they did encounter a few bumps on the road down their path. Despite the kinks, Fox has done quite a great job with more than half of their adaptations, like Logan, Days of Future Past, and Deadpool. Though the one thing that critics and fans alike criticize the franchise for is the series' inconsistencies and plot holes. Specifically, more so the mutants' ages. I mean, First Class took place in 1963, and Apocalypse was in the year 1983. And none of these schmucks look like they aged today. And why does Wolverine look like this in 1973, but this in 2000? Same reason why there's a P in Pterodactyl. That's just how it works for some damn reason. Just a heads up, spoilers for all of the X-Men movies all the way up to Logan. And I will be including mutants within the franchise that aren't really X-Men members. And when I say that, I mean like Magneto or Mystique. Not super obscure characters like Villain Number 33. Just the relevant characters who have been in X-Men movies is what I mean. Also, one more thing. This came out before X-Men Dark Phoenix. If anyone dies in that movie, then you know that this video is going to be outdated in a year. So yeah, the question of the day is, exactly how old are these X people at the end of the flick Logan? Emphasizing that one more time, this is about how old the characters were when they died, or will die, not how old they were the last time we saw them in 1983. Anyways, here we go. Number 1, the Wolverine. James Howlett, aka Logan, is certainly the most popular character of the X-Men members. And he's pretty damn old. He was in the American Civil War, the Second World War, and literally every movie in the series. In the mid-1840s, Logan accidentally kills a papa when he first learns that he has powers. It turns out that mutant powers are like acne and crippling depression. They emerge when you start growing hair down in the nether regions. Meaning, if Wolverine was just a teen back in the mid-40s, he must have been born more or less around 1832. Skipping towards Hugh Jackman's final portrayal as Logan, the year is 2029. That's the same year in which he died.
What have I become? My sweetest friend.
Suggesting that he was about 197 years old. But the Cinefix channel brought up a cool point. Wolverine's consciousness went back in time in Days of Future Past to 1973. Implying that he relived another 50 years. So in a sense, his physical body was 197 years old, but his consciousness, the thing that remembered all the pain and suffering, was 247 years old. Number 2, Professor Xavier. Professor X is that one teacher that you just love. He's that one guy that gave you extra credit for just simply showing up to class. He's also one of the victims of terrible aging. Dude straight up swapped faces within the span of 3 years. He was just 12 years old when he first met Mystique in 1944. Basic math tells us that he was 74 when he got utterly obliterated by Jean Grey in The Last Stand. But they retconned that, and he survived all the way up to 2029 in Logan, allowing his character to reach the ripe old age of 97. Number 3, Magneto. Again, Magneto is not particularly a member of the X-Men, but he's practically been a villain for almost every movie of theirs, so he's essentially kind of in his own way. In 1944, at the Auschwitz concentration camp, teenage Eric Lenscher figures out he has powers when he was forcibly separated from his parents. In the original timeline, he was very much alive, but in the revised timeline, it's more than likely he died a while back before the events of Logan. In said film, a car radio goes off suggesting that the X-Men squad, along with 600 other people, were unintentionally killed by Charles. Xavier experienced a catastrophic seizure in 2023, which we see many forms of in the movie, that was so devastating that many died. It's unknown if Eric was among those who died in the incident. To be honest, he probably wouldn't have been killed by that, as his helmet protects him from the weird stuff that goes on in Xavier's mind. But he still probably died of old age, because he was never shown or mentioned in 2029. If he made it to 2023, then that would put him at 93 years old. Number 4, Cyclops. This one is where things start getting a bit tricky. This character's been recast so many times, it kept shifting the age range for Scott Summers entirely. In 1979, Cyclops is seen in high school as a student, one that looks well above the age of graduation, but hey, I ain't judging. Even if we were to consider him a freshman here, it still wouldn't make sense for him to look even younger in 1983, and yet still be in high school. Either his birth date changed, or the boy got held back a year or two. Rolling with the new timeline, this would put Cyclops around 57. assuming that he was killed in the Westchester incident, which is probably the case. Number 5. Jean Grey. Jean Grey has also had her timeline utterly scribbled out by the movie studio itself. She was like 12 years old in The Last Stand in 1986, but then she's 17 in 83. Disregarding that blunder, the new timeline shows that she was around the same age as Cyclops when the Westchester incident happened, or when she was presumably killed, 57. Unless of course the studio decides to kill her off again in the upcoming Dark Phoenix movie. Number 6. Beast. The brilliant Hank McCoy was said to have been killed in the original timeline by some Sentinels sometime in 2015, but he ultimately made it past that to 2023 when Wolverine corrected everything in Days of Future Past. Despite that, it's presumed that he died alongside the other X-Men. He was around his mid-20s in 1963, meaning this guy was pushing 85 at the time of his death. The fact that he was almost 50 and still looked like this in Apocalypse is baffling to me. Real life fountain of youth right here, folks. Number 7. Mystique. Mystique is the one exception where it doesn't matter if the actress doesn't look older 10 years later, because she can make her appearance the way she wants to. She was just 10 years old when she wandered into Xavier's house in 1944, so that put her age at 89 in 2023. Would she have been around the X-Mention that year? If you're talking about the new J-Law iteration, then it's highly plausible as Fox has been building her up as this mentor person as if she was a main X-Men member. Number 8. Storm. Storm's age is never specified in the films, and it's made even harder since they altered her history as well with X-Men Apocalypse. Her school grade level is never hinted at, we don't see her parents. The only thing we do get is that she idolized Mystique, and she got by pickpocketing others in Cairo. But we did get an Easter egg sort of nod to her in X-Men First Class. When Xavier first uses Cerebro, he was able to locate some mutants in search for team members. One of the first mutant kids we see is possibly a 10-year-old version of Storm. If it's not, then GG, my bad. This would make her 30 years old by the time Apocalypse came around, and 70 when she died in 2023. Number 9. Quicksilver. The highlight character of both Days of Future Past and Apocalypse also shares the Fountain of Youth that Beast uses. Legit, it's like these 20 years were just consecutive days of the week. Oh yeah, fun fact. He was also in X-Men Origins Wolverine, but played by a different actor. Look at that. It's a tragedy that he was a part of that inconsistent train wreck. Quicksilver was 18 years old in the revised Days of Future Past timeline, and he died when he was 68. Number 10. Kitty Pryde. Kitty Pryde is the first one on this list that wasn't so old when she passed away. The first time we see her is in X-Men, but she never really plays a prevalent role until Ellen Page picks up the role in the third film. Though the actress is well into her adulthood, the character herself is most likely near the end of her teenage years. 18, as she is shown running out and about everywhere from class to class as a school student. She was 34 years old when Xavier killed the X-Men. Number 11. Iceman. The one guy I used to think was the Silver Surfer on the Marvel vs. Capcom 2 player select screen floats in the same boat as Pryde. He was shown to be simply a student in the first X-Men movie in the School for the Gifted, so that'd make him around 34 years old as well by 2023. Number 12. Rogue. At this point, I'm just being redundant, but whatever. The three of these love triangles that didn't seem to get along are all around the same age. Number 13. Angel. Angel's birth date revision is stranger than others when compared to the other X-Men. Like Jean and Scott, his original birth date was changed, but the difference being that it was a drastic alteration. Yeah, I'm talking so much so that he could have literally been the father of himself. In the OG story, he was an American in his early 20s in 2006. Meaning that he was born somewhere in the mid-80s. But in Apocalypse, he comes from a British heritage and he's already in his mid-20s. He's also one of the X-Men members, if not the only one, to have died pretty early on. He was blown to smithereens in 1983 inside the X-Men squad plane. It's ironic because he lived up to 2011, as stated by one of the marketing campaigns for Days of Future Past, when Sentinels shot him down, but doing the math, he was still right about the same age when he died, 25. Natural selection got his ass good. Number 14. Nightcrawler. Nightcrawler is one of those special cases again where we have to dig a little deeper under the surface to find out how old he was. Cause you know, his age was never given and he wasn't really a student. In the original source material, Nightcrawler's parents were Azazel and Mystique. We don't know if that applies here, but to be honest, that's all I've got, so I'm sticking with it, fam. If Mystique and Azazel really were Nightcrawler's parents in the movies, then that would mean they would have had to smash the pasty and been nasty in between the time they joined the Brotherhood in October 1962 to when Azazel died in July 1963. This means he'd be 20 by Apocalypse, and judging by how he didn't pop up at all in Logan, it's safe to assume that he died from the Westchester incident when he was 60 years old. Number 15. Jubilee. Jubilee's entrance to the beautiful world that is Mother Earth also went back decades. She was a high schooler in the early 2000s, and in Apocalypse, she also was a high schooler, but this time in 1983. This would make her just as old as her buddies Scott and Jean, around 55 to 58. Number 16. Colossus. Colossus was a high school student in 2 of the X-Men movies. I don't know how, because this boy looked like he hit puberty twice already, so he was probably like 34 when Xavier had an episode. As for the Deadpool version, I honestly have no clue, so I'm just gonna list the one from the X-Men movies. Number 17. Deadpool. Similar to that of Angel, Deadpool's birthday was also dramatically changed after Wolverine done messed up the timeline. I don't know if this movie even qualifies into the same cinematic universe. They have 2 different Colossuses. In X-Men Origins Wolverine, Wade Wilson in the year 1973 is in his early 30s. But fast forward to last year's Deadpool, he is now in his late 30s, or early 40s, in 2016. Now this is a huge guessing game here, but if this movie does really take place in the same universe as the rest of the X-Men films, and he really stays dead for good in the year 2023, the year all the mutants died, then Deadpool would have been 47. Now remember, no one said for sure that he was in the same continuity. Him just making references to the other mutant members doesn't count, because he was just breaking the 4th wall and making a joke, my dude. So recapping for your convenience, 197 physically, but 247 mentally, 97, 93, 57, 57, 85, 89, 70, 68, 34, 34, 34, 25, 60, 55 to 58, 34, and 47. Remember, this list isn't super exact. You can give or take a few years on some of these folks, but the age range they each could actually be at should be pretty close to what I listed. So those were how old the major X-Men characters were in the X-Men movies. Who do you think aged ridiculously well in the span of 20 years? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you found this video entertaining, then be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, consider following me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And for more of my videos, just click right here.